Cost management in Chapter 8 is extremely important to project management. Cost estimation is the first step in determining whether the project is valuable. Unit outcomes for this chapter are to demonstrate an understanding of the various types of common project costs and to apply the project cost discussion as it relates to the project lifecycle and scheduling. You'll be doing that in your discussion post. So we have common project costs that you're going to find across the board in just about every kind of project. So we have labor, which are associated with hiring and paying the personnel. Then we have materials, which are all of the things that are going to need to complete the project, equipment and supplies. Then we have subcontractors who supply resources, and also it could be subcontractors apply experience to our project. Then we've got equipment and facilities and also travel. We have different ways to examine project costs by investigating the nature of the costs themselves. Various forms of project costs are those related to type, direct or indirect, frequency of occurrence, recurring or non-recurring, the opportunity to be adjusted, fixed or variable, and schedule, normal or expedited. In this slide, you can see that we're looking at direct versus indirect. Direct labor costs are those that are clearly assigned to the aspect of the project that generated the cost. So if we have a programmer who is spending all his time or her time on the project, then we would calculate the total direct labor cost, which would be the labor rate times the total labor hours. And that's easily attributable to a specific project. But we have indirect costs, which generally have to be calculated to the project. Things like general and administrative tasks are going to be allocated to the project because only portions of these costs belong to this specific project. This is figure 8.2 from your text on page 277, and it shows this more clearly. We see our direct costs, material, labor, and equipment, and then our indirect, also known as overhead, project overhead, and general and administrative overhead. When we look at, we want to do fully loaded labor costs, and this is one of your assignments. There's more than that goes into figuring the labor costs than just the hourly rate. So we can have an hourly rate of a full-time programmer of $37.50 an hour. We're going to need that person for 80 hours, and we have an overhead charge of 65%, which is health insurance and, well, let's see, health insurance and other insurances and other benefits that that employee has. And that's going to give us a fully loaded labor cost of $49.50. But if we add non-working time at the rate of 12%, non-working time would be walking down the hall to the restroom, getting coffee, talking with others. Times when we're not working is the hourly rate of $37.50 times those hours needed of 80 times the overhead charge times the personal time, and that makes our fully loaded labor costs go up. But for an hourly employees, there may not be so much overhead for things like health insurance, so the calculation would look like this. Hourly rate is $12. We need them for 80 hours. The overhead charge is only 35%, and personal time is 12%. So the fully loaded labor cost would be $14.51.52. Then we have recurring and non-recurring costs. Costs, as we said, can be examined in terms of frequency with which they occur. There are non-recurring costs like preliminary marketing or training, things that are going to be done at the beginning or the end of a project. And then we have recurring costs typically occurring throughout the project's life cycle, like labor, logistics, and sales cost. Then we have fixed versus variable cost. Fixed costs do not change throughout the project. For example, a lease of equipment remained the same. Variable costs can change throughout the project. For example, equipment we own whose lifespan degrades with use. So the variable cost is going to go down. Then we have normal or expedited costs. Normal costs are those associated with the ordinary movement of the project. We're not going fast or slow, we're just moving along at the normal pace to be on schedule, and those costs are known as normal. But then we can have expedited costs when some portion of the project has changed, causing things to move forward more quickly. For example, to speed the project up to completion. So we've talked about the common project cost, and in your discussion, you're going to talk about it as it relates to the project life cycle and scheduling. And all this information comes from your textbook.